Tonight, a deepening crisis addressed by the Queen herself.
Sit-down interview with Oprah Winfrey. The couple alleged members of the royal family are racist, saying that...
And Duchess of Sussex will not be returning as working members of the royal family.
Fight yet, and how their kids are caught in the middle. The fight is...
I wonder, when you watched Meghan Markle speak out, what went through your mind?
Look, Harry and Meghan on the other side, not too many fans of Harry and Meghan.
A really good article in the Telegraph about the fact that this is now rock bottom for them.
Britain's Queen Elizabeth is presiding today over an unprecedented meeting of royal family members amid the...
Queen wants progress to be made today. She wants progress made on a resolution at pace.
Saddened to learn the full extent of how challenging the last few years have been for Harry and Meghan.
Now expressing her support for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's decision to step back from royal life.
Tonight, the Queen preaching unity as her own family braces for the potentially bombshell interview.
The late Queen was so fearful of Harry and Meghan that she wouldn't want to be alone with them. Let's just take a listen to that.
She's a chameleon. She, changes based on her environment. I think this is the real Meghan.
The Queen has agreed to let Meghan and Harry quit the royal family.
She was at Sandringham, the same estate where she had spent every Christmas for decades, the same grounds where she had walked with her corgis, hosted family, and quietly held the monarchy together through crises most people never even heard about. It was the evening of January 8th, 2020, and somewhere across the Atlantic, her grandson had just pressed publish. No phone call, no warning, no courtesy of a heads up. If you want more deep dives like this, make sure to subscribe to Royal Archives. What Russell Myers uncovered, and what palace sources confirmed in the aftermath, is that in the hour Harry's Megxit statement went live, the Queen was told nothing. Not by Harry, not by Meghan, not by anyone in their inner circle. The woman who had given that young man his title, his protection, his platform, and her name, found out the same way millions of strangers did. Through the noise, through the scramble, through aides suddenly moving faster than they should have needed to. That is the story. And it is worse than most people realize. To understand what January 8th really meant, you have to go back to where the Queen's mind was in the weeks before it. The Christmas of 2019 had been, by most accounts, a subdued one. Harry and Meghan had announced they would be spending the holidays in Canada rather than joining the family at Sandringham. It was the first significant break from royal tradition that carried a public sting. Staff noticed. Close observers noticed. The Queen, characteristically, said nothing publicly, but those around her understood the weight of it. For Elizabeth, Christmas at Sandringham was not simply a holiday. It was a ritual, a gathering of the people she loved most in the place she loved most, doing what the monarchy had always done, present, unified, visible. It was where she felt most herself, where the formality softened and the family, however complicated, came together. Harry's absence was a choice, and choices like that leave marks. She had spent the final weeks of 2019 watching her grandson's marriage, his new life, and his growing distance from the institution she had devoted her entire existence to. She was not naive. Those around her, aides, private secretaries, members of her household staff, later recalled that she was watching developments carefully. She was hoping, not demanding, not threatening. Hoping. Hoping for a resolution that would keep Harry within the structure she had spent 70 years building. She had not given up on him. That matters, because it makes what happened next so much harder to absorb. Then came January 8th. Harry would later claim, in his March 2021 interview with Oprah Winfrey, that the contents of the January 8th statement had been shared in a letter to his father, Prince Charles, at the end of December, while he and Meghan were still in Canada. In his telling, the information went to the institution. He had followed a process. He had done his part. But that framing deserves examination. A letter to Charles is not a conversation with the Queen. A letter shared with the institution is not the same as the monarch being personally briefed, personally consulted, personally asked for her blessing or her thoughts. Elizabeth was not Charles. The heir and the sovereign are two entirely different things. And Harry, who had grown up inside the machinery of the monarchy, knew that distinction better than almost anyone. Russell Myers, reporting for the Daily Mirror and later drawing on material for his book, was clear on this point. The Queen was not consulted. The Queen was not warned. When that statement went live on the Sussex Instagram account on the evening of January 8th, the palace was caught completely flat-footed. Aides were scrambling. Phones were ringing in corridors they should not have been ringing in, and the woman at the center of it all, the one whose name, whose legacy, whose 7 decades of service gave the whole enterprise its meaning, was finding out in real time. 100 minutes. That is how long it took Buckingham Palace to issue a response. 100 minutes of internal chaos, of aides trying to reach the right people, of communication staff trying to draft something measured while the story was already spreading across every screen in the world. The statement they eventually released was dignified, controlled, exactly what you would expect from an institution that had spent a century perfecting the art of saying very little. Discussions with the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are at an early stage. Early stage. Those 2 words carried everything. They were the palace's way of telling the world, without saying it directly, we did not know this was coming. Myers was not the only one confirming the blind side. Multiple sources close to the palace told journalists in the immediate aftermath that the mood inside was one of hurt and disappointment, not rage. Elizabeth was not a woman given to rage, but hurt. The specific quiet hurt of someone who expected better from someone they loved. A source close to the palace put it plainly: the Queen was not best pleased. That phrase, so understated, so British, so perfectly designed to contain something much larger, carried more weight than it appeared to. Not best pleased from someone who knew her well meant something close to heartbroken. What made it worse was the timing and the method. Harry and Meghan had chosen to release their statement unilaterally in the evening without any coordination with palace communications. There was no joint messaging, no agreed narrative, no protected space for the Queen to respond on her own terms, in her own time. Instead, she was handed a fait accompli, a public declaration by her grandson that he was stepping back, redefining his role and splitting his time between the UK and North America. All of it laid out before the world before she had been given the chance to respond privately. For a woman who had spent her entire reign insisting on process, on protocol, on the quiet dignity of working things out behind closed doors before they became headlines, this was not just a surprise. It was a violation of the order she had spent her life maintaining. The palace had handled crises before: abdications, divorces, deaths, scandals that would have broken lesser institutions. But those had, in almost every case, been managed from the inside outward, contained, controlled, shaped before the public saw them. January 8th moved in the opposite direction. The public knew before the palace was ready, and the Queen was left to respond to a world that had already formed its opinion. The days that followed were telling. Harry later recounted that when he and Meghan landed back in the UK after their Canadian holiday, he received a message from his private secretary, Fiona, cutting and pasting a communication from the Queen's own private secretary. The message, in effect, said that the planned visit to Sandringham, which the Queen herself had warmly and personally extended, could not go ahead. Think about that carefully. The Queen had personally invited Harry to Sandringham. She had said it warmly: the moment you land, come up, stay for dinner. It will be a long drive, and you will be exhausted. That was not a formal summons. That was a grandmother reaching out to her grandson. And then, after January 8th, that invitation was quietly, coldly withdrawn. Not by the Queen speaking to Harry directly, through intermediaries, through the layers of palace machinery that exist precisely to keep emotion at arm's length. Whether that withdrawal was the Queen's own decision, or the decision of those managing her schedule and her image, has never been fully confirmed. Harry believed he was being blocked. Those close to the palace implied the opposite, that the Queen had made her own choice about what was appropriate given the circumstances. But what is not in dispute is the shift itself, the warmth of a personal invitation replaced by a formal message delivered through staff. That change, from grandmother to institution, tells you more about what January 8th broke than any official statement ever could. Russell Myers spent considerable time examining what the Megxit crisis meant not just for the institution, but for the Queen personally. His conclusion, drawn from palace sources and the documented public record, was that Elizabeth experienced the events of January 2020 as a personal wound, not purely an institutional one, a personal one. She had, by all accounts, tried to protect Harry throughout his adult life. She understood his sensitivity in ways that the broader family had not always managed to. She had watched him struggle after Diana's death, watched him grow up in the full glare of public grief while being asked to perform composure. She had not always handled it perfectly. The institution rarely does, but she had given him space when space was needed. She had welcomed Meghan without the resistance that some in the family reportedly showed. She had tried to make room for what Harry needed, and in return, on the evening of January 8th, she was given nothing. No call, no warning, no courtesy of a grandson picking up the phone and saying, "Before the world finds out, I wanted you to hear it from me." Hugo Vickers, whose authority on the modern monarchy is difficult to overstate, has been direct about what the Sussex crisis cost the Queen in her final years. The distress it caused her, he has said, cannot be measured easily. This was not a woman who aired private pain. She did not hold press conferences about her grief. She carried it the way she had always carried everything. Quietly, back straight, expression composed, never letting the outside see what the inside felt. But those who knew her saw it. The weariness that crept in around certain subjects, the way her face changed when Harry's name came up in contexts that were not straightforward. She loved him. That never stopped. But something had been disturbed that the love alone could not fully settle. There's a specific moment in the aftermath of the Sandringham summit. The crisis meeting convened 5 days after the statement on January 13th. That reveals more about the Queen's inner state than almost anything else in the public record. She issued a personal statement, not a palace statement, a personal one written in the first person, carrying her voice directly. And in it, she used a phrase that her communications team would not have included without her explicit direction. Although we would have preferred them to remain full-time working members of the royal family, we respect and understand their wish to live a more independent life. Although we would have preferred, that is not the language of an institution managing a transition. That is the language of a grandmother who wanted something different, who had hoped for something different, and who was now, with all the dignity she possessed, acknowledging that she had not gotten it. The restraint in that sentence is extraordinary when you understand what it contains. No recrimination, no anger made public, just that quiet, devastating word. Preferred. She had preferred, and she had not been asked. Harry's own words, offered in the years that followed, confirmed what palace sources had already suggested. He regretted it. Not the decision itself, not the choice to step back, but the manner of it. The way his grandmother had been left to find out through the noise. A source familiar with Harry's private reflections on the period was clear on this. He regrets that he did not appreciate the impact of bypassing her, that the woman who deserved to hear it first had instead heard it last. That is not a full accounting. It falls short of the directness the moment required, but it is an acknowledgement, partial and belated as it was, that January 8th had been handled in a way that caused real damage, that the person most owed a phone call never received one. What this moment did to the relationship between Harry and the Queen unfolded slowly across the remaining 2 years of her life. There were moments of reconciliation. A visit in 2021, the Platinum Jubilee in June 2022, just months before she died, where Harry and Meghan appeared publicly alongside the family. Photographs of the Queen holding Lilibet, her great-granddaughter, meeting her for the first time. There were gestures of warmth, small and significant, that suggested the bond had not broken completely. But those close to the Queen observed something that the photographs did not fully capture, a guardedness that had not been there before, a careful quality to the interactions. Managed, warm, but no longer fully open. The ease that had once existed between grandmother and grandson, the ease of a relationship that did not need managing, had been replaced by something more careful. Something that knew it had been tested and was not entirely sure where it stood. Myers noted this in his broader analysis of the period. The unresolved nature of the Sussex fracture sat in the background of the Queen's final years, not consuming her, not breaking her, but present. A quiet shadow on the last chapter of a reign that deserved better than the distraction it received. The silence of that hour is what stays with you, not the statement itself, not the specific words about financial independence, or split residency, or a new progressive role. What stays is the quiet inside Sandringham on the evening of January 8th. The Queen, who had navigated the abdication crisis, 2 world wars in her lifetime, the collapse of the empire, the death of Diana, and decades of internal royal fracture, sitting in the house she loved most, in the final years of the longest reign in British history, and finding out through the scramble of aides and the ringing of phones that should not have been ringing. Russell Myers uncovered what the Queen was told when Harry's Megxit statement posted. And the answer, confirmed by palace sources, by Myers' own reporting, by Harry's later admissions, and by the 100 minutes of institutional silence before the palace could even form a response, is that she was told nothing. That is the truth of January 8th, not the statement, the silence before it. And that silence, in the end, said everything that Harry's words did not. If this story has stayed with you, if what the Queen endured in those hours has shifted how you see everything that followed, then you already know there is more. The Sandringham Summit, 5 days later. The private conversations that have never been fully reported. The Platinum Jubilee, where she stood on that balcony and held the line, one final time. Royal Archives will keep going where the official record stops. Subscribe, and you will be there when we do.